What was the turning point when you realized your marriage was broken, and what emotions were you going through?
So there were a lot of low moments leading up to that realization where there would be big fights or big meltdowns by me, where I would be giving my husband books or writing him letters or saying like, I'm really unhappy. I'm really unhappy. Like, I need you to hear this. And, this is not sustainable. I can't continue to feel this way long term. I'm not saying let's get a divorce, but this cannot last like this. And what happened was I had done this so many times and we'd had so many conversations that went nowhere or even often devolved where my husband would get upset and, wonder what my problem was and why I was always having a problem. And, if I didn't think he was good enough, then, why was I here? That type of thing. And I would just fall apart. That I finally realized what I was doing was not working. I was like, this is not working. My approach, even though I've read a lot of books, even though I understand human psychology to a certain degree, I feel like I'm a good communicator. It's not getting through. It's not working. And I just felt really angry because he would always say that he loved me and he wanted to stay married. And that was like an obvious given to him. There was no equivocation. He's incredibly loyal. But then he wouldn't approach these subjects with me, or he wouldn't engage them in a way that was satisfactory or felt like was going to make any changes. So I was really angry. And then I was also really confused how this could happen. How could I be with this absolutely brilliant man who's a good man and we can't even meet on what I could thought were pretty simple topics or typical relationship concerns. And I was just devastated because we had all the workings of a fantastic relationship. We had great kids. We had a good home. We are both, have similar values and loved each other. So I knew that it would not make sense to go and try again with someone else. But I also saw that what I was doing was not getting me anywhere and was actually making the relationship worse.
And what did you do to save your marriage?
So I came at this in a roundabout way because I did get to the point where I knew that I didn't know what I was doing, or that whatever I was doing wasn't working. So I didn't know what else to do. But also at this time, we had a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and I was absolutely drowning in motherhood. I was exhausted. I was irritable all the time. And I was really disappointed because I felt my husband was not supporting me emotionally in that time. But a big part of it was I had a lot of judgment on myself because I had always dreamed of becoming a mother and I was so excited to have a family. And here I was with my beautiful little family and I was a wreck. I was unhappy. I was impatient. I was getting angry quite easily. And I felt a lot of shame for not being able to be the mother I wanted to be. And so I was sharing this with a friend of mine and she recommended, this parenting summit. And I listened to this one coach who spoke about the rage she experienced as a mother. And it really resonated with me because I was so turned off by kind of this nicey parenting advice that was totally impossible to implement when you're like on fire. Like you're so triggered and so mad and so exhausted that I couldn't possibly enact what I knew was appropriate parenting. Again, I had read a lot of parenting books. I had been a Montessori preschool teacher. I thought, I know this stuff. What is wrong with me? So I went to this parent coach and she finally got into my head that I was not a victim of my children's behavior and that I could actually walk away from my husband and my kids anytime I wanted. And I always thought, oh no, you can't do that. And she's like, people do it, don't they? And people do it. People walk away from their families all the time. And so it was that realization that I was acting like I was suffering under this family that I had picked. And also the understanding that I was not creating emotional safety for my children. That my negativity and my anger and my tension in my nervous system was absolutely frying them, frazzling them, bringing out the absolute worst in them. And that realization immediately made me go, oh, that's also what I'm doing to my husband. This constant bringing up of problems, this constant stress I'm under, this tension that I activate is making him totally unsafe to speak to me or bring anything up or be real with me. And that was the conscious awakening to take responsibility for my emotions. And before that work, I didn't know you could take responsibility for your emotions. I never heard anything like that. I didn't know what you were supposed to do with your emotions if someone else couldn't soothe you. If someone couldn't give you a hug or say sorry, what are you supposed to do? You literally just have a meltdown, like a child meltdown when you need someone. Because again, not many people know that there are ways to self-soothe and there are conscious ways you can be with your emotions and recover from that. So once I started living in that way and being in my own body and not just projecting everything else out onto everyone else, I was able to approach my marriage in a completely different way. A way that was empowered, frankly, instead of saying, if my husband doesn't do these things, I can't be happy. If my husband doesn't show up, then I'm screwed. And that sense of powerlessness was excruciating. But as soon as I started operating from this new way of like, maybe everything I thought about relationships is not the end all be all, I began to see changes in our relationship.
Where do you believe is this victim mindset coming from? And not only for you, but pretty much every woman that I meet, me included, does have that kind of mindset. And why do you believe, especially in girls and women, almost brainwashed into thinking that just because you are in a relationship or in a marriage, it will all be roses and rainbows and unicorns. And as soon as shit hits the fan, you think it's not the right relationship. You think it's the wrong partner. You think it's, oh my God, it can't be the one.
Right. What if I made a big mistake? I shouldn't feel this way if this is my person. I shouldn't be stuck in this. So I think that there's a couple things at play. I actually think that there's a deep biological root to this, because in most of human history, women were completely dependent on the protection of men. Like, if you didn't have a man to provide for you materially and protect you and provide for your children, you are going to die. Your kids are going to die, or you're going to end up in some dire, awful situation where you have to do things you don't want to do and whatever. So there's a primal terror of not having your protector. And what that activates is a victim, right? Like, if he doesn't do it, I have no other options. And along with that is, I can't speak up to him. What if he gets mad? Then he'll send me out and I'll have no other option. So I believe there's really a primal terror that is at work in women when we try to be genuine with our husbands, when we try to be honest with them from an open-hearted way, because we're always going to the final stage of, and then it won't work out, and then I'll be destitute, like this destitution. And even in recent history, it hasn't been that long that women had the capacity to do for themselves financially, right? So the biological root of that is potent in us and creates that absolute terror and, lizard brain fear. But then there's also the socialization that goes along with it, because that was the fact for most of our history. So you're going to teach girls how to please men, keep quiet, don't upset them, make sure that you cook and clean and you make them as happy as you can, right? This kind of like panic energy of like, serve the men, make them okay, make sure they're okay. So then when a man's angry, we're like, oh my God, like we all kind of hold our breath, because both our biology and our conditioning has proven to us that we are not okay without this man taking care of us.
That is so profound. You speak about the primal fear or terror of women, and I think this is one of the greatest fears that probably women have, and only in the last years we have seen a more empowered type of woman that she believes, I can make my own money, I can go to work, I can take care of myself, I don't need no man. Only in the recent years we have seen that kind of development. But prior to that, in my personal story, I have never thought about or seen, for example, a single mom. For me, the only thing that existed was a married couple. Like, throughout all my childhood, my parents are still together, my grandparents are still together, like very traditional, And then you never think about what direction it could go based on the choices that you make, that you blame others for. Obviously, if you are in that victim mindset, again. And so the first time that I heard about single motherhood was when I was pregnant and about to become a single mom. When the doctor asked me, can you imagine being a single mom? And I was like, what is that? I didn't even know how that would work, right? And so there was all of a sudden this exact terror that you are speaking of. This humongous fear of, will I even survive this, right? Will I even make it? How am I going to make it? So this is deeply, I think, ingrained in maybe even we can call it ancestral trauma, if you will, for many girls to serve on a certain level that is maybe not even healthy anymore for us. That we avoid conflict, that we don't know how to communicate, that we don't go ahead and understand men, how they really function, what they really need, right? They don't need all the talking. Like when you're raising a boy, for example, you know what I'm talking about. What are the other mistakes that you see women are making in relationships, and how do they differ from mistakes or misunderstandings about love, relationships, and marriage when they are actually married?
So there's a misconception in our culture that marriage is just a piece of paper and that it doesn't really change anything, so why do it? But actually, it does make a big difference, especially if you do it publicly. So the whole thing with contracts and vows is they're ancient. We figured out how to make people knit together. You drink stuff together, you eat together, you say a bunch of words, you do it in front of everybody, right? This has a potent effect on us as social creatures and on our understanding of what we're getting into. So when people cohabitate, they say, I can leave whenever I want, but I'm committed to this person, right? This is the realm of two autonomous beings dancing, and maybe they like it, maybe they don't, right? But when you get married, it causes this union which activates childhood trauma, because now you don't feel like you can escape, because there'll be social consequences, there'll be emotional consequences. When you have kids, that puts the last tie on this container, which it's so interesting. It's no wonder that there is a polarized opinion about marriage, because containers are just containers. They can be cages of torture and entrapment, or they can be a beautiful nest for people to flourish in. And so, but when we get scared and we're inside this thing, it becomes a cage. And we're like, oh my God, I can't leave this thing. I have to feel this way. I'm going to feel terrible forever, because now I'm with them forever. So everything you feel, you project forever. I'm going to feel like that forever. I can't tolerate that forever. I'm having a panic here. And this person, their behavior or what they do, they need to stop. So marriage is a double-edged sword. It will bring out the absolute worst in you. For the most part, people do show up with all their trauma. And it is your opportunity to heal all that trauma, because now it's being brought up. Now you're having to face the shadow, the rage you have, the entitlement you have, the selfishness, or the, covert people-pleasing stuff you do is all going to show up in that context. So I think people have to be really aware that if you are not doing your childhood trauma work, a marriage particularly, will force you to do it.
So then we would have to redefine marriage, if you will, not saying that marriage is a container in which you love each other till death do you part, and roses and rainbows and romance and all that stuff, only good things. But then we have to say that marriage is a container in which you abide, or in which you commit to solving your own childhood trauma with a person that you believe is best equipped to assist you in that and to support you in that. Not even save you from your own trauma, but support you in that. And I think from that perspective, we as women would make much better choices also when it comes to choosing the right man for that particular function, and not, is he flirty with me, or is he XYZ? Does he make me feel good? Is that really good enough? Right? If you think about the whole package that you bring from your family, your family, what has been going wrong in your family, right? Like all the smart women do. So you have to be quite conscious about the choice again that you make, and then committing to not being stuck in that commitment also, but only committing to, that's my personal perspective at least, committing to healing yourself in the best way possible. And if your partner, whatever you chose, is not willing at some point to go there with you, then I am a believer that you don't have to stay. That yes, you may have made that commitment on paper in front of everybody and you promised, but I think there are certain things that should exclude your terminal, so to speak, or eternal commitment to staying no matter what.
It's funny you use the word terminal, because that would be you're going to die and this thing is going to kill you. But yeah, the conversation around how much should you tolerate or what should you stay for, it's very personal, and I hesitate to go deep into it because I don't know what people are dealing with, and what people can tolerate is also very individual and based on their trauma and based on, you know, some people are more robust to handle a certain level of conflict. Some people are going to collapse under that based on temperament and trauma and whatever. On the far edge of things, what I've noticed, and this is what I practice with my clients, is that if your relationship is making you sick, you have the responsibility to go. And that's because, you know, a certain level of emotional trauma over time will make you ill. It will. And if you haven't done the inner work yet, you have to do that first, because you might be making yourself ill. And I think we need to take responsibility for that. Like, there's a level of childhood trauma that will cause you to find trauma in every relationship you're in. And you will be victimized in exactly the same way, because you are so blind to how you are abandoning yourself. And you're so blind to how you are creating scenarios for other people to take advantage of you. Like, it's that extreme sometimes. So my thing is always, you don't know if your relationship is too difficult or too hard until you've done a lot of your own work first. Because you could just be projecting so much of that and creating so much of that if you haven't gone and taken real radical responsibility for your own well-being and your own health. And when you do that, if you're still like really suffering and this person is actively harming you like a lot, those relationships will make you sick, and you'll actually, you know, get chronic illnesses and whatnot from those types of relationships. So definitely not those. Now, when it comes into the realm of, is this aligned? You know, that person is not evolving. I wrestle with that. I come from a fairly traditional perspective, and it's partly for children. Like, it's partly knowing the benefit of marriage to children. Now, again, that is minimized depending on how negative the relationship is. So I don't know. And I'm not going to tell people, you did the wrong thing, you did the right thing. I mean, like, I'm the opposite of you. My parents are divorced. My husband's parents are divorced. Like, I have seen necessary divorces all around me, and I don't judge any of those people, because I'm going, yeah, that was not going to change. That was not going to change. That was probably going to get worse. But I do want to share that I feel a deep commitment to the institution of marriage, because it does form this lifelong container, so that if there are these low spots, sometimes you can ride them out and people get to new places. It requires a huge level of emotional maturity. It requires a different version of marriage than what you're talking about, which serves both individuals' good feelings or romantic desires. And as much as I am a romantic, and the whole point of my process is so you can feel romance, you know, to the end, and it doesn't just die. But I would be, you know, dishonest if I didn't say all long-term containers have those low spots. They have low spots, and they have mundane, and they have huge challenges. Like, for example, say you're married and you have 2 kids and you're having a real good flow. You know, maybe you've gotten through the hard spot when they're babies, and now, you know, it's romantic, you love each other, you're recommitted, and now somebody gets sick. It's going to change things. Now somebody loses their job. Somebody gets depressed. Somebody's parents die. Somebody's kid gets an illness or a mental health issue. Like, these are real life situations that are more important than your immediate feelings, right? And anybody who's loved knows that, right? Like, there are times when you're like, no, we have to stick together. We need to have each other. Like, marriage is also a practical survival unit. Like, you know, when you talk about single moms and women being powerful and they can survive, that's hard. You can do it, but it's hard, right? And all single moms will say, like, it's tough to be the container, the financial container, and be the emotional, and be the nurture for my kids, and be the available, but be the protector. It's like, this is like a practical masculine and feminine unit that is marriage. And I think that when we get into the self-development space and the spirituality space, it can be so hyper individualistic that we lose our vision of that unit, right? It's not for everyone. And some people will say, no, I think that marriage it's a passe institution. It's too long. We live too long now. There's that argument. But again, it's kind of like a value thing, and it's also based on what you see as the purpose of relationships or the purpose of marriage. And for some people, that's, creating that legacy for your children and creating that foundation. And for some people, it's, the individual evolution of everybody involved, and they wouldn't want to stay with someone if they were having to sacrifice or compromise too much, right? They'll say that's a self-abandonment. I don't want that. Yeah, it's a tricky topic for sure.
Let's assume that we are sure that we have made the right choice of a man, but there are entering this low phase, and we are certain it is the low point because we have experienced the high point. So we have a reference point, and now we see things are going south and things are not going right, just like how you described it in the beginning, how you were feeling, what was happening, and that you were very clear about the fact that things are not going right and you can no longer stay in this particular state. And would you say, do women misunderstand about men in the sense that they do the exact wrong things when they enter this low phase, and what can they do about it?
It's a really good question, because relationships are made and broken in the low part, right? In the high part, everybody's fine. We're all at our bests. We loved each other for our personalities and temperaments. It's great. It's easy. But when we go through the low is when we either do a lot of damage that doesn't get recovered, or we, actually completely fall apart. So how do we get through that low and not make it last longer than it should, I suppose? So I think one of the first things that women do is they take it personally. And this is the biggest mistake, because we have this fixation on men, like we talked about, of them being our providers. Whenever they have a feeling, we make it about us and we want to fix it. Oh, he's not doing well. Oh, what can I do to make him better, right? How can I make sure he's fine? Oh, he's, kind of off. Oh my God, what's wrong with the relationship? Like, maybe he's not into me the way he was. He hasn't pursued me in a couple weeks and he's been so focused on his work. So we either make ourselves to blame, right? And we try to do gymnastics to fix that, or we do the opposite. We make him to blame. Oh, he's neglecting me. Oh, he's a workaholic. We pathologize them. We diagnose them. We say, you've got these problems. Why are you such a jerk? Like, get your act together. And we take this very attached, right? We're so attached to it. This shift in our marriage. We get too hooked into, oh my God, things are going down. I'm really worried. And we get really, really panicky about it. And often, because men are wired so differently, they don't even notice sometimes that stuff is going down. They're like, right. So and we're like, can't you see? We're falling apart. We're losing each other. And they're like, I just been doing a thing. Like, so men have single focus. So they can literally be only focused on a particular problem they're trying to solve. And when they're focused on that particular problem, whether it's a work problem or their emotional life is not going well, or a financial problem or something like that, they are not aware of the periphery. Blinders are on. So what they can do and what we can't do is they can put our relationship on a shelf and say, check, I'm married. It's been good so far. Wife's happy. Kids are healthy. Check, on the shelf. Now I will redirect my focus to solving a different problem. Meanwhile, women are like, you have left me rotting on the shelf. How dare you? How dare you leave me rotting on the shelf? You are an awful human being. You obviously don't love me, or you have stunted relationship skills. And this is where we say men should be like women. Because he doesn't keep an awareness of the emotional health of the relationship while doing his other things, he's not good enough. He's deficient. And if we could step back and take an observer view, right? And go, okay, what is the long story here, right? The long story is our relationship's been great, and The short story is my husband is fixated on something else right now, right? Okay. Number 1, don't make it personal. Number 2, don't make it his fault. And then number 3, communicate your needs in a non-blaming, judgmental way. So you might say, hey, I noticed that you've been really working hard on whatever thing, and I really miss spending time with you. I'd love to spend more time with you. What do you think about that? And when you come, you see how my energy is not attached? I'm not, oh my God, I'm going to ask him for more time and he's going to blow me off. I've got this abandonment rejection energy, right? Like, no, it never works. I'm so terrified, right? And he's like, what is the intensity here? When men feel us coming at them with intensity, they can feel it from 10,000 miles away, right? They're like, she's coming with something. I don't know what it is. I'm going to get in shit. That's what they think, right? What is she going to blame me for now? And we wonder why they're so defensive, right? Why are they so defensive when I just want to talk? It's like, we have not checked in on our own energy. We have not gotten clean about it. We haven't done the emotional labor of deciding what we want and need. And then we dump this all on his feet, whether it's our blame or our insecurity. It's usually insecurity or blame. We tend to one or the other as our temperaments go or as our wounding goes. And we make it worse. And now, instead of him being focused on something else and just not focused on us, now he's avoiding us and the negative energy we're bringing to it. And he's feeling activated and shameful. And so now he wants to go and spend time alone to regulate those emotions. And ask me how I know. This is like the way to push your husband away. Every single time you have a low time, you push him away further. And then when you have up times, he's still over there. And you end up in this new status quo of distance. And this is like the marriage story of our time, right? We went from being close to 10 years later, this is normal. And how did we get here? And do we love each other anymore? Do I even like this person? Do they even like me? And it's born of each of those failed interactions.
I find your example very vivid when you said he has put me on the shelf. And I think women have to remind themselves that just because he put you on the shelf, for however long or for whatever reason, you have the choice to get down there. You have the choice to actually not be on the shelf anymore because you are a free human being. You can actually take the focus away from the shelf, from him, and start doing you want to do best. Because in the moment when you are on the shelf, you are just collecting dust. You are not growing. You are not developing yourself as a human being, as a woman, as a mother. You are taking your focus on a person that does not even see you in the way how you are coming at him energetically. So you are kind of developing yourself back by being such a nagging woman. And we've all done that. Like, we are catching ourselves every day doing that, you know? And we have to remind ourselves that your personal development, at least that helps me to remind myself of that, my personal development is number one. And whoever supports me, great. But if I am alone in this and I have to do it alone, it is so much fun. I don't even need no one to support me in that. So the thing is, as soon as you take your attention away from your husband, for example, you will notice how he described it, pushing him away, right? Further and further away with your negative energy. That's how he at least perceives it. For you, it is about nurturing energy. You want things done, right? For you, it is a positive intent, but he kind of takes it as an attack, really brutal attack that they cannot possibly survive because their brains are wired differently. They have zero chance when you start communicating. So you're pushing him away, right? And the moment you take your whole focus off of him, you will notice that he will start to come back when you start growing again, when you tap into your feminine energy again, when you start flourishing like a flower again without him. Like, you don't need his help. Like, you have everything that you need inside you. And At least that's what I had to learn as a single mom and as a single person just in general. You basically don't need anyone to grow yourself and to become a beautiful flower, so to speak. And when I was in relationships, that was exactly the breaking point of everything. This kind of panic when things go south, when he does not do the things that you want him to do, and you kind of fixate yourself so much because you don't want to be abandoned, because you so much want to be loved, right? And you so much believe that you made the right choice and would never in a million years admit that you might have made the wrong choice, right? But even if you made the right choice, like, you need to create the type of energy where you are collected and graceful and you are just exuding beauty and wisdom and growth, and like, it will not take long until you see him coming back pretty quickly, because you will be radiant in a way that this is exactly why he fell in love with you. He did not fall in love with you when you were nagging, when you were like scratching his back, that's not the woman he fell in love with. So I think it's really important for women to remember that. What is their innate power? Really, their grace and intelligence and the way how they grow.
I love that, what you said, that women don't have to stay on the shelf. And that's exactly what I did. The mindset shift for me was from, I need this man to give me so much attention and so much time, and I need all these little things to validate me, or else I don't feel good, to, wow, I have a lot of freedom in this relationship. I actually have a ton of freedom, because when he's focused on his things, he trusts me to do whatever I want. And that's a great relationship, because if you made that point about picking someone who helps you heal, sometimes it's the person who activates you the most who helps you heal. And that's the really tricky thing about choosing, because my husband has no problem giving me all the freedom in the world. And I didn't know I needed that. I thought, no, I want this super close relationship. I want it to always be, really, really, really cozy. But that was my insecurity speaking, right? And because he's such a solid, grounded presence, which means he doesn't react positively or negatively a whole bunch, he's just who he is, living his life, then I got to practice being myself and validating myself and doing what I wanted. And what really transformed my thinking about it is that women were often wanting men to flow with them, I'm in this mood, come with me, let's be cozy, and men are not flowy, right? They're like the mountain, they're just living their lives, focusing on what they're doing. And when they're not focused on us, that's our opportunity to flow. Like, to go and be in whatever energy we want to be in, and be with our girlfriends, or dance to music, or, just do, as women, like you said, it's our evolution, and it's our change, and our constant desire for novelty and excitement and fun and this and that we are expecting men to feed. But we're the source of that energy. And that was such a big shift for me. Like, we want a man who's gonna be exciting and different and novel and all these things. No, that's the guy that you dated that was super toxic. Remember him? He's not a healthy masculine energy, right? That kind of ungrounded man is very entertaining and it's very seductive. It's like the rock star energy, right? And women can get all caught up in wanting that because it activates us in that same energy. It's a mirror energy, right? But in a long-term relationship and in marriage, it's the difference that is the gold. And we got to stop looking at our husband's differences from us as a problem, because it's what balances the whole container, right? So when your husband is hyper-focused and you feel like you're on a shelf, that's your indication to go and have a blast as a woman. Just go do the womanly stuff that you like to do, and that don't make him come. Don't make him be interested in the stuff you're interested in. Because again, like you said, when you go and do that stuff, the polarity and attraction increases so much. Because you feel amazing, and he goes, there's that woman who I chose because she has something I don't have, that I don't create on my own, that I don't have access to, that I need desperately, this feminine energy thing. And so when we have confidence in ourselves as women that we are irreplaceable to this man, that we are absolutely mesmerizing and fantastic, we stop groveling for attention. Because we don't need to grovel for attention. We need to just go and enjoy the hell of our lives, and the man will find us irresistible. And that was such a cool discovery, because my husband is so stoic and so like, he's immovable, right? So there's no groveling that will ever affect this man. Like, totally repels him, right? He's just like, no, right? Like, you are a powerful, strong person. Go and act like that. And I thought that I couldn't get his attention. I thought, oh, he's such a focused on work, and he's so disciplined, and like he's just always doing something and always has a project, that he won't pay attention to me. But that's totally not the case. As soon as I took my energy on my own path, the attraction increased completely, and there's no diminishment. Like, I was under the impression that the longer you stay married, the more the attraction decreases, because that's what you see in normal relationships. That's what you see in the world. And I thought, oh, this is really scary, right? And women, how do you keep your man's attention? And how do you, not have him stray and whatever? And it's like, no, that's not what makes attraction. What makes attraction is how the energy you're in as a woman. And you can maintain that till you're 95 years old. Doesn't matter how many babies you had. Doesn't matter how old you look. Like, you don't have to be afraid of all those conventional insecurities that women carry around. All those things only matter for the initial attraction. Once you get past 3 months, you're into the energetic attraction. And it's not of course, if your appearance completely changes, it will make a difference. But the thing that maintains it is the energetics.
I love that. And you talk a lot about the different roles that women sometimes can take on. They either become the mothers to their man, the maids, or the therapists. Now, why do you say is it important to step away from these roles to actually achieve a successful, happy, and long-term marriage?
From our conditioning and our anxiety of abandonment, like we talked about before, we'll try to please a man in every way possible. So they'll think, I'll make his life more convenient by, being his assistant in whatever way. I'll make sure that he's never hungry, and I'll try to fix all his emotions, because maybe if I do all that stuff, he will never leave me. And that overdoing and that mothering your man is a complete turnoff to the emotional attraction in a relationship. So like we talked about before, the energetic attraction comes from you being in your feminine energy, or you could call it your lover energy, to distinguish it from the mother energy. When you are a mother, you are a familial face. You're like his mother. You're like somebody who's always available, doesn't have needs, doesn't have opinions, just serves. Now, people will say, oh, men love that. They love to be served. Well, everybody loves to have stuff taken off their plate, don't they? That's fine. Nobody's going to say no if somebody completely takes care of their whole lives. But they will not be sexually attracted to you. They will not be emotionally attracted to you. And this is where we get it confused. We think, I'm going to make myself indispensable by doing all these tasks. But actually, that's why men have always had mistresses. And this really cleared it up for me. It's like the conventional role of wife was not lover. Nobody expected her to be your lover. Nobody required it of her, because men always had the option to take a mistress. She was the muse. She had her own life. She had her own identity. She had her own personality. She was fascinating, and she was his inspiration, because she is the symbol of feminine energy. And so in the modern times, when we want to be monogamous and a wife wants to also experience the role of lover, we need to understand that that old role never was about keeping romance alive. It was never about sustaining passion with your man. It was about keeping your protector satisfied by fulfilling your duties. So women had duties and men had duties, and if you did them, you stayed married, and your children had 2 parents. It had nothing to do with being in love. It wasn't even expected. And what people don't realize is that one of the reasons that marriage is so different today is almost exclusively because women's expectations have changed. Men's expectations have not dramatically changed for the most part, but women's have completely changed, because before we were in need of a protector. We were performing and placating to keep him. which means we did not have extravagant demands. We did not necessarily expect our emotional needs to be met. We were just looking for, protector and provider. Maybe we didn't like it, but we weren't going to get divorced. We weren't going to actually choose something different. So now, because we as women are asking for what we truly desire, which is this full-orbed relationship, it's truly on us to understand what it takes to create that.
I also think that with the rise of your expectations towards a partner, you would have to level up yourself as well. And I think this is something that girls typically are not being taught. They are taught to be pretty, they are taught to be serving, they are taught to be sweet and helpful and respectful and all these things, even in modern times. Subliminally, you will ultimately teach your daughter this, unless you are very conscious about it and you make it shift there, because that's also something that you learned from your mother. How did your mother raise you, right? And she most probably raised you in a way that you exude these characteristics to be a serving woman, wife, whatever. I think we need to also make a shift here to teach girls to not only be pretty or to only take care of however they look, because that in the long run, and you mentioned the 3-month mark, that will get passed, right? He will obviously always be attracted to your outer space, so to speak. And if you don't take care of it, will lose attraction as well. But if there is the different type of attraction, which you also mentioned, the emotional attraction, right? The metaphysical attraction, if you will, then it will not matter as much, right? Does not mean that you have to look always polished and with makeup and all that stuff. We need to change that narrative for future generations, for girls, that, as you say, just like marriage changes and your expectations as a woman changes towards a man, you need to level up by a lot. Like, even if you want a traditional marriage, I think the container that you have been given consists of different parts of your body. It is not only your outer looks, it is also how you think, how you talk, how you feel, how you manage your emotions, right? How you treat other people, how you respond to crises and different and difficult things. Like, how do you manage all these things? And I think we also, as parents, we don't teach our kids that enough. We don't pose enough focus on it. And especially for women, from my personal observation, who are in marriages, oftentimes focus so much on the man and on the husband and what he does wrong again and again, nagging him till he is completely sick of it. And we don't pay enough attention to the children and what they actually need, because in that time when you were nagging, you could have taken care of the kids. And especially if you have a girl, she has certain needs. If you have a boy, same thing. Like, how are you going to teach your boy to be a future husband if that is what he chooses? Or a man who serves in a certain way in this society? I think this, and it does not mean that you have to give equal time to both parties, so to speak, kids and husband. It is all about the quality, and I think we don't talk enough about quality.
I totally agree with you, and to that, the quality of your relationship is such an important educator for your children. And we've talked about this before, but we were talking about cycle breaking, right? And this is where creating a really beautiful, healthy relationship helps your children not to grow up with the same trauma you grew up with about what relationships are supposed to look like, what men are supposed to do, what women are supposed to do, which didn't serve them and didn't serve you. And so, people would debate, oh, you should put your husband first, your kids first. It's like, it's kind of a superficial argument because, like you said, it's a whole, but you definitely don't want to neglect your relationship thinking that serves your children, because the quality of your relationship is the container for your children. And so they're going to go, okay, this is the standards, because they pick up more than what you can teach them, right? You want to teach them really effective skills and understandings about how to operate, but they're going to pick up mostly from who you are. And when you said we need to up level, it's so true, because one thing I joke about is that the best marriage advice is dating advice. Because in the dating space, everybody knows you got to level up, right? Everybody knows that who you are is the product, not just how you look, not just how much money you make, but like your whole capacity, your emotional capacity, your intellectual capacity. How resilient are you? You know, what are you bringing at this very core level of who you are, right? And so people go, okay, I'm going to up level because I want to have this high quality relationship. The exact same principles happen when you are married. Even if you are already married, you up level yourself and it affects your partner. It affects the container. Now, of course, if something's really toxic, it doesn't really work. But if it's not totally toxic, you will absolutely influence your partner and your relationship will improve because you have increased the quality of yourself as a person. And this is not about perfection, and it's not about kind of striving or anything. One of the things I think about a lot is people complain about emotional labor, right? Well, women are doing all these things to be emotionally aware, and why do we have to do all that? And why don't men do that? And you know, I want to say, if that's how you feel about emotional labor, you're not doing it right. Because emotional labor improves the quality of your own life immensely. You do emotional labor so that you can be in peace and in joy and in integrity with yourself. And when you do that, your life is awesome. And if other people don't want to get on board, your life's still awesome. You get to choose who to keep and who not to keep out of your power. You're not panicked. You have a level of confidence and level-headed that you're equal to life. You can handle what's thrown at you. That is what emotional labor gives to you. If your emotional labor is managing other people's emotions, that is garden variety codependency. That is not some kind of emotional up level. And it is exhausting and not a great role to play as a woman or anybody if you're going out and trying to make everybody else feel okay. The real work that women do is stopping that. That is the hard work. That is the up level from unconscious, instinctual, please the husband, keep the kids happy, try to look good while you do it, life, which will drain you dry and, you know, ruin your marriage, and you'll wake up wondering why none of it ever worked, because that's our instincts ruining our lives, like, frankly. And so the up level that, you know, I had to do and I'm still doing is choosing myself and going, I am not doing anybody favors by being a martyr. I am not doing my husband a favor by, you know, trying to make the house so clean that I never exercise or I never go dancing or I never hang out with my girlfriends. Like, he doesn't care if the baseboards don't have dust on them. He wants me to flourish. That's who he married. This woman who was happy and had her own life and had her own hobbies and had her own interests. And so it's such an ironic of that committing to the container has required me to commit to my individuality. And my individuality strengthens my ability to contain and process any of the tension that happens from being in a family, from dealing with someone different than you, from having children, right? Like, motherhood is one of the most taxing, all-encompassing roles there is. If you give up on your individuality, you'll have nothing to bring to that. You'll just be like, okay, and now I'm dead on the floor, collapsed, because I don't have the strength and joy and vision to bring here. When we got married, we did not have the skills to be married. And then when we had kids, we didn't have the skills to have kids. So we have to learn all that inside that container. It's not like you're going to be able to take what got you there, brought you here to get you to the next place. So people see it with men. This is one thing I say to women. They go, why do women have to do all this stuff? And how come men don't do all that stuff? And I said, wouldn't you like it if your husband leveled up? And they're like, hell yes, you know? Wouldn't you like it if he took care of his fitness and if he was careful how he spoke to you and the children? They'll be like, yes, I would be much happier if he did that. Well, of course the same applies to us, right? If it's something that we think would have a huge impact on us, if he did it, the same thing is going to happen. It's going to have an impact. And again, you don't have to do it. It's your choice. You could say, nah, I want something simpler or whatever. But truly the gifts of that emotional maturity and of saying, I choose this thing is hard, but I choose that one. That thing's hard. I don't choose that one, but I'm in full power of everything I choose. It's amazing. I wish everyone had it. It just makes life so much easier.
Now, there's one question when I look at women and observe women who are in relationships or married, who are complaining about the type of work that they have to do, not only emotional labor, but also the physical labor and other types of labor. Like, why did you get married if you don't want to serve? Like, this is one question that comes up in my mind, because that would be the definition that I have in my head that would mean marriage or relationship. You enter into a relationship because you want to serve, not because you want to get something. Like, obviously, I had that mindset when I was a very young girl. As you mature as a woman, at least for me, it shifted. And I understood that you only enter, and it can be also a friendship, right? No matter what kind of relationship you enter, your first thought or question should be, how can I serve? Not what can I get? So it is, nowadays I see relationships so dramatically different from how I saw them when I was very young. Basically, relationship requires you to be a servant, like you are a servant to your newborn. You will not complain about why do I have to breastfeed you all the time? Like, are you crazy? Like, all the emotional labor that I have to do, you crying all day long, like, this is exhausting. Like, what are you doing to me? You would never do that to your baby. Like, you would never nag with your newborn. Like, you cannot even take your eyes off your newborn because you're so in love with that little being, and you're so happy that it is there and that you created it. And I think that we might be able to create the same view onto relationships. Like, this thing that we create together can be as beautiful as the newborn that you with your partner obviously have created. And this is a third thing I believe that exists. You exist on your own. Your husband exists on his own, but then it's something else, and this is the relationship. And I think when you view the relationship as something fragile, beautiful, flourishing, alive, that you have to kind of foster every day, like, there will be times when you will be able to do it well, and there will be times when it will be maybe not so easy to do.
I wanted to comment on what you said, because I love what you said about seeing the relationship as beautiful and fragile and like something we tend to. And I think part of that is you need to have a vision of what you're creating. Like, in my marriage, I call it the real life love story, which means I want to be able to be married for 50 years and go, that was amazing. And look what we created. Look what we came through. Look what we provided for our children. A big vision in our marriage is our children. We align on really wanting to prioritize them. You know, having that vision allows the long range, instead of like, oh, I'm in this low spot, throw it all in the bin, right? This has been really hard. It's like, if I can think like, no, I can see how we can come through this and how this can make us stronger because I have a vision, that helps a lot. And I also wanted to speak to the women who are upset about all the work they do, because I used to be one of them, is that a lot of it is emotionally unmet needs. It's not really about the stuff. Because when you feel loved and appreciated, like you're part of a team, like you're both working hard, you have a lot of stamina, like you have a lot of resilience. You're like, you know what, this is hard, but like, I'm proud of us, and my husband appreciates what I do and he sees what I do. It's when you feel unseen in that labor and like it's for nothing, and then at the end of the day your husband just watches TV and you don't even get a hug. That's when the resentment sits in, and we say it's about the stuff, when, I mean, sometimes it is, for sure there's unequal distributions, but often there's a lot of work to be done when you have a young family, and everybody's working hard, and it's not easy. But when, like, this is what I tried to convey to my husband when we were in that, and where we've now are able to, is I said, I just need like a hug, like when you're around, like just always, you know? And that actually fuels me to do this work, because now I feel you have my back. Now I feel seen. Now I feel like I'm loved in this. And it's amazing what a difference it makes. He just, you know, whenever we're kind of in the kitchen, he just gives me a long hug, and while we're talking. And now I'm like, this is how it's supposed to be. He works hard. I work hard. Doesn't matter if the jobs are always interesting or wonderful, but we're in this together. Whereas when he didn't give me eye contact, he didn't give me hugs, he didn't really smile at me, I found every task weighed 1,000 pounds. Like, I just hated all of it. All the domestic work made me crazy. I felt like I was just a slave in my own home, like, because the resentment and really the sadness and the grief and the loneliness were exhausting me. And so many times we focus on these superficial problems, and that's where I think we get stuck fighting over what's fair and who should do more. And, you know, men are like this nowadays, and this kind of gender war stuff, when a simple appreciation, you know, for each other, it just transforms so much.
I also think that it comes from a fairy tale like mindset that women oftentimes carry in their heads, me included, when I was young, to think that in a relationship you get that attention. I think it's always going back to attention. How much attention do I get from him? Again, what do I get? Right? This focus on what you get is something that I understand differently now. Because when you start from a perspective of what can I give, you all of a sudden see the positive things that he's also giving. Because you give, you focus on the things that he gives. And you no longer find it so dreadful when he is not giving, because you yourself are in a different space. And I think this is the hardest for girls and women just in general to do, to first of all get into that state where they are the givers without expectations. Like, why are you giving if you are expecting something back? That's not true, genuine giving then. Then you could say, well, in a relationship, you made a contract, or in a marriage, right? You agreed to do the work together. Like, why are you not here? Why are you not doing your part, right? And I completely agree. It should be mutual. But I don't think that mutual means that one day you wash the dishes, the other day he washes the dishes. I don't think there is an equal distribution. And the other part is also that women are not really taught how to ask, especially how they should ask men, how they actually work. And you mentioned that men don't really like to be talked to too much. They don't like long explanations. They don't want to know your life story or your emotional roller coaster. That's not what they are here for. I think what is really easy, and I can speak so easily to it because I'm raising a son and learned a ton by just seeing how this works and how my brain works. And I think, just like you said, if you actually find the courage or the ability to ask what you want or what you need without being the drama queen, so to speak, but just in a loving and soothing way. I need this. This makes me feel XYZ. And then you just have to observe, right? What is he doing then? Is he giving me what I asked him, what I needed? Beautiful. If not, then I would make some check marks on a different list. Like, if this continues that a man neglects you, I don't think that this relationship should be a relationship that someone should continue. Because there are boundaries again, and there are two buckets, if you will, that I observe. There are either women who say, I don't need a man, I can do it all by myself, and he's just there for whatever, for my fun part of life, right? I can do everything myself. And then there are women, and of course there's a gray zone as well, but this gray zone is not very loud because they are happy. These two that are on the extreme, on the outer sides, I think they are the most unhappy. And the second bucket is the types of women who are so committed to this type of fairy tale. They don't want to get divorced because they have this fairy tale in their head that it has to work, and no matter what, I will grind it through till we die. Right? And she will do everything to destroy the entire relationship she has with her children, which is even worse, in my opinion, than her doings in the marriage or relationship. And I think when these two buckets, and this is my very personal opinion, I'm not a dictator or anything, this is just my observation, I believe if these two buckets came actually more into the middle and learned, especially when it comes to communication, what do men actually need? How do I actually need to ask them for things that I need and be confident in it, right? Because when you are when your self-worth, self-esteem is so low, you will be aggressive, you will be angry, you will be dismissive, you will have the wrong tone that he will feel, and he will run. Like, you need to think about these things. And I think women need to go in the direction of learning communication more. It will free up so much, that will open up so many opportunities for them.
What you said about asking is that it has to be a genuine request. And this is something we don't admit to as women, but we make demands and we pretend the requests. You know, we'll say it nicely, hey, can you do this or that? And then if they don't do it, we are enraged, which means it was a demand, right? That is not a genuine request. If you make a request, that means they can say yes or no without reprisal. And we struggle, like you said, so much to ask that the fact that he made me ask and then still didn't do it is too much to bear. And we're just pissed, right? But if we can go, okay, I would like this thing, but this person doesn't owe me anything. That's a good mantra. He doesn't owe me anything. Yes, it's a marriage contract and all of that, but no human owes you anything. You don't owe them anything either, right? Like, this is all choice. He doesn't owe me anything, but I trust he cares how I feel. I trust he wants to help me. I trust he loves me. I'm going to ask. And if he doesn't do it, or if he says no, I'm going to sit with that. And I'm going to, like, in a long-term marriage, you need to try more than once, right? So you go, okay, what happened? How'd it go? And then maybe you express, hey, when this thing didn't happen, I was kind of disappointed. And they're going, what? I forgot, or whatever, right? And you're thinking, not, he doesn't remember anything, he doesn't care about me. You're thinking, he forgot. Take it at face value. Hey, repeat, you know, I get it, you know, it's easy to forget things, and I was kind of disappointed because you agreed with me you'd do it or whatever. And you provide that feedback, you know, the dialogue, this is how I think of it. The dialogue with a man is protracted, right? With a woman, you get it all done in one sitting. You take 3 hours if you need to. You get it done, right? You want to wrap that thing up with a bow. You want to have the agreements. You want to say we get each other, hug it out, done, right? And then, so nice. Exactly. Done. Have a giggle. You know, have some fun together. Okay. And with a man, when you bring something to the table, when you bring a request, when you express something, you now need to pause and let him process it. And not say anything and not have follow-up questions and not keep talking, because he will not be able to process it while you're talking. So you let him process it. Sometimes he doesn't process it in that sitting. And you're going, why didn't he say anything? Why didn't he respond? He was still thinking about it. This is a real thing. I know it's so foreign to us that you would not respond. Like in women's community, that is like high treason to not respond to someone verbally when they're talking to you. How could you not say something back, right? We can't even resist saying something back. We have to say something back, right? Well, have you seen men talk to each other? They often don't even acknowledge what was said. They might not even look at the person. It's just the things were said, and everybody assumes that everybody's heard, and that's the end of it. And so the way I see it now is that when you are calm and confident, like you said, you're able to have these long conversations without getting pissed off about it, right? Like, oh, we had to talk about it again, and then it was a week later we had to talk about it again. It's like, literally, this thing you're bringing up to him is not on his radar. So that's first of all the respect. He doesn't care about it, or else you wouldn't have to bring it up, right? It's not on his radar, the thing you need, whether that's emotional or tangible. It's not in his narrow focus, right? He's focusing on other things of his interest or choice all day. And so when you bring it up, the first time, it's only the first time he's heard of this thing. Like, you know, when you think about learning, it sometimes is helpful to think about something you had to learn that was hard for you to learn. Some topic that's just like not interesting to you, and you had to like grind it out. For me, it's technology. I like avoid the topic for a long time, and then I've got to go and watch tutorials on YouTube. Then I got to go try and screw it up. Then I got to go watch more tutorials. Like, it annoys me. And that's because it's not my zone of genius. It's not easy for me. And so it takes a long time. A lot of the things that women are asking from men, it feels like that to them. So the first time they hear it, they're like, oh, that thing. Not familiar, not good at it. Don't really want to think about it. They're not thinking, I don't care what you say because I hate you, but you'll get that little bit of resistance. Now, a confident woman is not afraid to speak up again because she knows her stuff matters, because she doesn't take it personally, because she's like, this is a relationship where I'm asking something from somebody that's not familiar to them. That's not their natural tendency. Women don't understand this because if our husband asks us for something, we feel very burdened to do it immediately. We're like, oh God, he's telling me what to do. That's because we think we'll die if he's unhappy. He is not afflicted with that conditioning where he will die if we're unhappy, right? He's just like, okay, I will focus on things I'm good at now, because that's what makes life go on, is when I'm productive and focus on things I'm good at. So all that to say, don't rush the evolution. Don't rush the conversation. Like, if you are with a man you love, who you're like, this is my forever person, take it slow. You want sustainable change, right? You want it so that, so for example, if you want him to do a job, like I wanted my husband to sweep up after dinner because there's too many jobs, after dinner. And I thought, I never get to the sweeping. I'm going to ask him to take over the sweeping. Tangible, finite request, not just help me with something. This is a job that I would like to hand off to you. And so I made it clear that I wanted to hand it off. I didn't want it to be my job anymore. I didn't want to think about it anymore. I didn't want to have it be anything that I ever did. And he started doing it. And whenever he did it, I would say, oh my God, I love this is done, so I don't have to think about it. I would express how this benefited my life, right? And he would do it more and do it more, to the point where now I legitimately don't think about it, and he legitimately feels like it's his job. When I say thank you, he says, it's my job, right? But that was because I patiently accepted the fact that this was not something he was normally paying attention to, and that I didn't want to ever manage it. Like, people talk a lot about how women are the managers, and they're always telling men things little by little every day, and it creates all kinds of tension, and it's not very effective. And that's because men, if you manage your husband, that's worse than being his mother. Being his manager is the most unsexiest position you could ever take in his life or your life. You're both going to be turned off like crazy. So anything not to manage him, do not do it. And the way you phrase that is, I would like to hand this off to you. I would like it to be off my plate, and I would like to give you control of it. And when you give him control of it, you no longer critique it, you no longer inspect it, you no longer do anything but express gratitude for how it has affected you. And I really wanted to add that in there, because this communication piece you're talking about, you need practice with it, because it's not what you're used to with other women. And so creating, like, this is another tangent, but I gotta say it. Women were meant to live in groups, right? When we're all together in a group, we organize ourselves real fast, and we get things done really fast. And we have, like, I used to live with roommates, 4 women in one house, 4 women in another house. It was amazing. One person cooked one night, one person cooked the other night. We had this great system. We communicated. We had house meetings. It was really awesome. Men don't do that. Have you ever seen a bunch of men trying to cooperate like that? It's horrible. They all hate it. Someone is always trying to take the dominant spot. If men are together in groups, what they do is organize strict hierarchies, like the military, right? Because they can tolerate a strict hierarchy if everybody knows who's in charge of who, and everybody does their job, and there's no dispute of any of that. They are very effective and functional in these strict hierarchies. You know what they have no idea what to do is live with a woman. What is that? It's not a strict hierarchy. It's not a friendship. It's none of those things. It's completely foreign to any kind of arrangement they've ever had in their lives. And you as a woman also don't know, because it's not your brother. You don't want that energy. You don't want to do the dad thing that most of us do, is treat him like he's our dad and be defiant and frustrated because he's not listening. And you don't want to treat him like a girlfriend who you can just communicate in a feminine way. So it makes sense that it's hard. It makes sense that we need to learn, like, how do I maintain that I'm his lover, I'm his cherished woman, and that he's this beautiful, intelligent man I admire and respect, and keep that strong polarity while we have to clean up after dinner, while we have to run children, while we have to discuss finances, while, people get sick and are puking and the whole thing. And I love this, because what I hate about the industry is they make romance outside of all of that. You need to go on date nights over here. You need to go on holidays over there. Now, don't get me wrong, doing novel things is a great way to spark some chemistry and have a good time. But if you can't hold chemistry in the everyday, it will not be sustainable. If you can't find a way to communicate with your husband where you're still his lover and you don't just slip into manager hat, it's going to fall apart again. You're going to go back to feeling dead and roommate-like. And what happens for a woman is she gets resentful and cold and angry. And what happens for a man is he just turns his attention elsewhere. So that's why you said, we're always lacking this attention piece, is because instead of making it about you, like he won't be like, that woman, and focus on her. He'll just go, that doesn't feel right to me. I'm going to focus my attention somewhere that feels right. And then a woman will feel more and more neglected and ignored and put on the shelf, right? So learning how to enjoy, the cleanup after dinner and feel appreciated and feel in love and feel like this person makes my life better. This person makes my life easier. That's what makes you want to stay married for 50 years.
You literally answered my question, my next question that I wanted to ask, because you said it so beautifully how you asked your husband to take over the sweeping after dinner. And that's exactly what I would do from my new learned perspective and level, so to speak. Like, they need not necessarily requests. Can you do it? Because you can say no. You want to avoid that. If you don't really can take a no, or if that thing is not an option, whether he's doing it or not, if it needs to be done and you don't want to be the one doing it, hand it over. And find a way to say it in a way, the dishes need to be done by 2. I, in that time, will take care of XYZ. Like, this is a completely different feeling, a completely different energy in the room when you actually delegate in a very non-aggressive way, but also without expecting him to do it like you would do it. And that's the part that you said. You just say thank you, right? Even if you see the spots, right?
Right.
You will still say thank you because you want, and that's a development, that's a process that when he takes over a new thing, obviously it's new, we all are learning, we all are progressing in our own speed and way, like, he will improve. The more he will do it, he will improve. And it is so funny that we even have to talk about it, that many women tend to treat their husbands like little boys.
Completely.
And I noticed that when I actually became a mom of a boy. Before that, I didn't even notice it myself that I was doing that. But when I had my son, I realized, my God, I was awful. Like, that cannot continue anymore like that. This is a no-go. Like, even with children, and we tend to do it with both realms. We do it with the partners and we do it with the children. We don't know how to delegate confidently without hurting the integrity of the person and without expecting something excellent to be presented on the table, how we would do it, right? Because we had maybe even decades to practice that skill, and we expect the same level of profoundness, right, to be delivered in just the first try. Like, that's a lot of pressure that we put on the kids, on the partners, maybe even on our friends, right? If we have such humongous expectations, and yet again, it is the wrong focus. Simply, it's the wrong focus. We really need to refocus on ourselves. How do you want to grow in this situation when something needs to be done? I want to grow as a communicator, for example, so I will delegate. I want to grow in a different area. Instead of doing the dishes, I want to take care of my business, for example. So you do the dishes because you have a day off or you have a week off or whatever. And this constant balance that people have the chance to do when they are in a relationship, of actually trying things. Also the expectation of having it perfect the first time when you actually communicate something to him is like you will be disappointed. It is, I think we need to go back to a level of, we will try this, right? I will try presenting this to the partner and we will just see how he sees it. And as you said, give time. Like, why does it have to be done today, now, in this instance? Like, maybe that was your mom that is speaking through you because your mom expected you to do it right away, right that second, when she told you to, I don't know, do the dishes or washing the clothes, you know? I think we need to step back from that rush that we feel. We need to present a perfect home. And you mentioned that as well. I think this is a stupid idea that women put on themselves. Again, nobody is putting that on them. We do it by ourselves. And I think it's making us sick on so many levels, and we need to relax. I think we need to chill. Like, we get angry. We get so angry and frustrated when men tell us, calm down. Like, everything is good, calm down, right? We feel so offended. But in the end, it is really true. It is really true that we need to kind of take a level down, and all the emotional roller coaster that we are going through is not what he's going through. And I totally agree what you mentioned and said, that it is not on his radar, and especially not on his emotional radar, because that is living on in the Antarctic. Most probably. Yeah. So if you want to reach him emotionally, you cannot come from that type of frequency. Like, that needs to be a total different thing for him to feel motivated to move from Antarctica to the place where you are living, right? Like, that needs to be something beautiful and juicy and graceful, right? It cannot be something, aggressive.
Stressful. You know what you said about, you got to what I was thinking when you said about what we put on ourselves about the house. Like, we demand perfection from people because we demand perfection from ourselves. So huge movement for me was letting go of my self-judgments. It was all judgments. I don't mom well enough. I don't clean well enough. I don't wife well enough. Everything I'm doing is not good enough. I need to be in better shape. I need to eat better. I need to be more effective and more disciplined. Like, so many ways was I making it hard on myself. And Alison Armstrong helped me with this. She says that women come with a vision of the ideal woman in our minds, and we judge ourselves against this ideal woman all the time. And then we go a next step and we judge men against the ideal woman. Like, we can't even keep up to our own impossible demands of ourselves. And then we're now looking at men like, not only do you not live up to it, but you don't even care you live up to it. Why don't you feel bad about yourself like the rest of us? And men don't have that self-imposed ideal woman thing. So they're going, why are you so mad? Why are you making such a big deal about this? This is not even a priority for me. Why should I have your priorities, right? Whereas we as women, we carry this endless, like, too many priorities. And this is where, you said they say we should chill. What men bring and what we can learn from them and receive from them is prioritization. There's only so many things you can be really intense about. You can't be intense about everything. You can't, keep all your standards at 10 out of 10. And we think as women that we're supposed to do that. And it's funny because we blame men for this somehow, but that's not men's priorities. They have totally different requests of us. And so when you were talking about serving in your relationship, I was really thinking about that, because for me, it's all been about receiving. I haven't even thought about it as serving. But what I do realize the shift was for me is I went from serving in traditional ways and thinking, serving in my marriage means maid, mother, therapist, to serving in my marriage means soothing energy. It means receptivity, it means gratitude, and it means playfulness. That's what is required by my husband and my kids. That's what they really need from me. That's what makes the hugest difference in their lives. So if I want to move the needle and give love that has the biggest impact, I focus on those energetic things, and the services that are practical, I still do them, and I do them with more peace because there's an energy flow in the home that is healthy. Whereas, I provide this energy when I can, and my husband is lit up and energized by it and appreciates me, and he serves and tries to, he does lots of acts of service because that's a typical masculine way of giving love. And now I receive it and go, oh my God, you've taken care of so many things. Thank you for fixing this. Thank you for, getting the fire started every morning, moving the wood, even when you're busy. And then he says, you're taking care of everything. I appreciate that so much. And so I think what I struggled with when I was in a hard place in my marriage, when people talked about going to your marriage to give, is I thought, I already give too much. I'm getting nothing. How can I give? I need to get. Like, I was too starving. But it wasn't that I wasn't receiving anything. It was that I hadn't opened to receive, which I know you know about, but many women do not, is that you cannot receive things accidentally. Like, you have to actually consciously go, oh, my husband is doing this for me. Okay, that is him showing love. Feel it, be in it. Because if you're in resentment and anger and exhaustion, there is no receptacle for joy and love and gratitude. Like, there's just nowhere in you to accept it and to receive it. And so this is where I was talking about the woman who is so traumatized and doesn't know it will block everything coming to her that is good. And she will say that it's men. She'll say men do nothing. Men are useless. Men don't give anything to women. They provide nothing. And I'm going, I used to think that way. I get why you think that way. If that has been your experience with men, if that was your mother's experience with men, then you will see men as a problem. You will see them as misbehaving. You will see them as takers, right? But the true nature of masculinity is give, 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 and don't stop giving. And the beauty of it is, because of their lack of emotionality, it's not about how they feel. It's actually a feature. They will keep giving no matter how they feel. And when you make them feel good, they just give more because they love to give to you. And it's such a revelation to me that we are missing out on what men have to give because of our own bad experiences with men. You know, we miss out on the good that they can give us.
And I think the very first experience that we make as women is the experience that we have with our dad. And I think it always goes back to that. And as you said, because we don't cherish ourselves, because our self-esteem is so enormously low, below zero, like it's frozen for many, many women, they will search for things that will reignite that belief that they are not enough, that they are not beautiful enough, don't do anything right, that they will never get it right, that they will never have anything good, and that they will continue receiving just breadcrumbs, right? I think then again, when the focus shifts from blaming men for everything and starting to recalibrate their own energy state, they will want to work on themselves until they have reached a level where it does not even come to them when the man is not doing XYZ for them. They will have the capacity to withstand that kind of storm, right? They will have the capacity and the understanding also. You cannot lead or build a long-term relationship if you don't seek out understanding of the other person. But that always has to start with yourself. If you don't understand yourself, where is my bickering coming from? Why am I so angry all the time? Why am I disappointed all the time? Like, when did you disappoint yourself so much that you are only looking for disappointment outside of yourself? This is always mirroring your own existence, your own thoughts about yourself. And this identity crisis that women are going through is so horrible that they have driven away men completely, that nowadays, at least in the US, men don't want relationships anymore. Divorce rates are going up. Even though US is not divorce country number one, I think it's on position 28 or something, or 21. It's not even number one, but I think women need to wake up because they are the only ones who can fix it. I don't think men will fix this situation because they did not cause it.
Yeah, what they say in the United States is that even though divorce is not going up, people are just not getting married. So people are choosing not to engage in the marriage project at all.
We can look at certain numbers. I did cram up some numbers because I was curious, what is the divorce rate? And my impression was, or my feeling was, that the US must be number one when it comes to divorce rate. But then I was quite surprised to see that the US is actually placed number 21, when it comes to the highest divorce rates in at least last year. And the Maldives are actually number one, and even Russia is placed number 3. Moldova is before US, Belarus, China, and Georgia, and Ukraine, and Costa Rica, all before the US. So I found that really, really interesting. And compared to that, especially the lowest divorce rate, and how interesting it became to me where those countries actually are, like Vietnam, lowest divorce rate, Sri Lanka, Peru, and a lot of South American countries where the divorce rate is the lowest. Now we could debate probably for years about why that is, but what is your take on this development that you say people are not even interested in marriage anymore, and that would have consequences for your job as well? You are a love and marriage coach. How do you see this development?
It's really interesting because there's a conversation going on online where women are arguing that marriage doesn't serve women, right? There's a feminist argument that marriage was designed for men and for women to serve men and children, and that, you know, women's economic status goes down, and all these kinds of arguments that women don't live longer. There's this whole argument about how marriage doesn't serve women. And then there's another whole argument about marriage doesn't serve men and how men are just, a woman can divorce you at any time for any reason, take half your things, alienate your children. It's not worth the risk. Women stop having sex with you after you're married anyways. Don't get into it. It's a trap, right? So you got this you got this bipolar messaging about marriage. And I think it's kind of like what you said about the hyper independent, woman who doesn't need a man, and then the woman who will never let go, is that the people who are the most wounded are the loudest on the internet, right? So if you have had a really toxic husband and he was a narcissist and he just ruined your life, you are warning everybody. Don't get with this person. You see red flags everywhere. You've got support groups. It's just a really hot topic. And in the manosphere, it's the same thing. If you had a really narcissistic wife who lied to you and cheated on you and, then alienated your kids just for the money, like, you're devastated. You're telling everyone on the internet, this is how women are. Women can be so bad. They're so manipulative, right? So I think that those conversations are scaring people in the middle when they're really extreme conversations. But there again, it's all about the trauma and your attachment style. If you grew up in a home with narcissistic, abusive parents, you're going to probably pick a narcissistic, abusive partner, or you're going to be the narcissist. Like, that's kind of the sad reality of it, right? So it's not really about men or women or marriage. It's about the re-traumatization of people and how marriage has broken down and family units have broken down and the health has broken down to where people don't trust it anymore. They're like, I haven't seen a good relationship. Even when I was a young teenager, I remember thinking, I haven't seen many relationships that I am excited about. How do you get married when you don't see models of people having marriages like what you want? Now, part of this is because the standard of marriage has changed, so people expected different things. But it's also because the happy people are quiet, like you said. There's a lot of people who have secure attachment, who get married and have kids, and it's not perfect, but they're settled and they're good and they don't have drama. Those people have no need to write a blog about it. Like, it's not an exciting story, right? So I think that that's part of it, is that, like so many things in the media right now, the fringes are really scaring the middle people. The middle people are going, oh, I didn't know it was this bad. I didn't know it was this bad. But that voice is just inflamed and it's loud. So I think that's part of the problem. I also think that no-fault divorce has made a mess of things because it's made the contract of marriage rather meaningless, right? If you can get in it for any reason and you can get out of it for any reason, what is it? And the reason that men complain about this is that men typically put more stock in that, actually. Because they're more commitment minded and less about the quality of the relationship and the emotions in it, they go, well, she promised to marry me. And they think that means she won't divorce me unless I cheat on her or unless I abuse her, right? So they really buy into the legality and the words of it and feel very betrayed that women have a different belief. We are committed to our emotions. We say, if I feel bad for 10 years, I feel justified in leaving you. Like, this was not satisfying to me. And so because the actual contract doesn't hold weight anymore for really anything, men are feeling betrayed by that and betrayed by women. And women are also going, it's really weird for women because women feel compelled to get married more than men do. Like, on a biological level, like what we talked about, we're going, I need to secure a provider. I need to secure someone to take care of me. But I'm terrified of him and I think he'll be mean. So we're kind of like a push-pull when it comes to marriage. We're really scared of what it might do to us. But we long for that security of that, like, this person won't leave me. This person is my person. He won't cheat on me. It soothes our anxiousness of what if another woman comes along, or, what if he changes his mind? Everybody knows marriage doesn't stop that. People do change their mind. People still cheat. People do all those things. But I think that there's a particular longing in the feminine for the security of the marriage container. And there's a lot of men who also want to be fathers and want to provide for that container, and they see pride in that and legacy in that, right? So marriage is still happening, and there's no stoppage in people wanting to pair bond, but the whole neat thing needs to be reoriented, and we need greater skills to do it. And the thing that nobody is talking about, and I think this is really important, is that marriage is becoming a high-class institution. People talk about it like everybody's not getting married anymore, and that's not true. It's coming from the bottom up, the dominance hierarchy. And that tells you something about the benefits of marriage for wealth retention and for growing wealth and for sustaining communities and sustaining networks. It's something that has served society very well and is hard to maintain when, there's lots of financial pressures or you're kind of dealing with those things. So I'm a big believer that marriage in itself can't be voted for, because it has to be a quality marriage. Like, it has to actually embody the values that marriage is supposed to, of the fidelity and the loyalty and the long term and the health and everything. But if you can create that, it's so valuable. It's such an asset to the whole society. It's an asset to the individuals. It's an asset to the children. It's individuals are unstable, and it's hard to navigate the vicissitudes of life. But when you have a marriage and a family unit, it's a little bit more stable, and you have extended families that get more stable. And so I think that we're dealing with the instability of the fracturing of marriages, right? If you get divorced 2 or 3 times and you all have different in-laws, it's really difficult to maintain any cohesion. It's really difficult to get support and feel supported in those things. So it's a very, very complicated issue. I think the reason that divorce in some of those places is rising is because they liberalized later than the States. So there's always a big divorce bump when a society liberalizes, because all the people who wanted to get divorced for like 30 years go and get divorced, and then it drops off because people are getting married who want to get married, and it kind of changes. But those Catholic countries have a much more social pressure not to divorce in Catholic countries, because it's a mortal sin.
Yeah, but also in countries like Vietnam, for example. I used to study Vietnamese language and saw lots of the cultural side of that country, and I was so surprised how men actually see women. And of course there's also pressure in that society for certain circles and areas of the society that if you divorce as a woman, you are worth nothing, and it does still exist. But the brutal difference between European US countries and Vietnam in the way how men perceive women, as they are so much more respectful to them. It's like, and vice versa. Also, the serving aspect that women carry in their hearts towards their men, because they know what kind of an asset a man is if he is a good man. In their definition, obviously, there is not a scheme or anything, or a template for a good man. Like, every woman needs to define that for herself. But I found that so profound that it changed my entire mindset back to, and I was studying, I was 20 something, and I was a man hater at that time. Gosh, I had the worst experience with men that you can imagine. And coming from Asia, a very far off village where I didn't even had a lot of contact with other people aside from our village and obviously the school, I had only this one concept about relationships. We only had married couples. There was only happiness that I was observing when it came to relationships. And we were not many people. The village was really small. You cannot even call it a village, right? But the relationship between men and women that I've observed was so beautiful, was so pure, was so respectful. But also the relationship between women and other women was enormously respectful, supportive. There was nothing about competition and behind the back talking bad about any other woman. That just didn't exist. And I don't know particularly why that was. I have some assumptions. But that experience studying Vietnamese language back in university actually brought me back to life. Because all that horrible experience that you can make as a young girl can really kill your soul. It can banish your soul into the hell realms, and you will have a hard time to come back. Which is why it is so important that we talk about these topics, because you need to have a lifeline. And this lifeline needs to start with you and with other supportive women, because I don't think you can have a successful marriage if your support system is also diluted, or if the support system is broken and you have women who are telling you, oh, he's such a bad man, why did you marry him? Or talking bad about your man in front of you, or that you yourself engage in talking bad about your men, to your friends. It's also the same thing, I think. Of course you are seeking support from someone, but if it's in a way that you are just bickering and that you are just talking bad to feel better, you don't have a support system that will actually enable you to what you've talked about, creating an asset. And I love how you put it, that marriage can actually be an asset. Or if you don't even get married, but you have a relationship where you both committed, and it doesn't have to be a marriage per se, as it is dying off, we can see that. But if it is a committed relationship, it can be a tremendous asset, a wealth-preserving asset. And wealth here, we can again say it's not only about the money, but what about the emotional wealth? What about the spiritual wealth that we can build together, in a solid, in a profound relationship that is supportive?
I love that preserving all those different kinds of riches in a committed relationship. And I agree with you. I have clients and I have friends whose cohabiting relationships are every bit a marriage spiritually. They exhibit that in every way. You don't doubt it, right? Nobody has one foot out the door. This is a truly committed relationship that they just, in their culture or in their time, like you said, they didn't choose marriage because that wasn't part of their value system. But I honor that so much. And I loved your story about Vietnam, because one of the things that happens in our culture is that there's negative viral memes about men, right? That get picked up from women who are really angry and upset, and it does affect your marriage. You're more likely to get divorced if your friends get divorced. That's a statistical reality. And it's because misery loves company, people mirror each other, and women can be the worst people to go for advice when you're unsatisfied in your relationship. And that's because they'll always take your side. They'll say, oh, that sucks. He was so mean. You shouldn't put up with that. How dare he? You're a wonderful person. And this is our heart and our validation and what we do wonderfully. But when it comes to relationship advice, you need someone to challenge you. You need someone to support your processing, and then you need someone to challenge you to grow up and find your feet and make a choice, and not someone who's going to pull you into this victim mentality. Poor you. How could he say those things? How could he be that way? He shouldn't do that. It should be, okay, yeah, maybe he shouldn't have done that. How are you going to address it? What's your approach? What's your next step, right? This action-oriented, empowered stance to your marriage, as opposed to, oh, that sucks. Men are like that. They're really lame. And when you talked about Vietnam, it actually, this is so crazy. It activated in me my fear of being judged for praising men. Because there is such a bizarre venom towards women who celebrate men. It's like, whoa, what kind of climate is that for relationships? Where it makes you, there's this judgment that you're weak, you're disempowered, you're pandering, there's something pathetic about you, there's something old-fashioned about you, there's something where you can't stand on your own 2 feet if you say, wow, men, it's really an asset to have a good man, and not just financially. It's an emotional asset. It provides a type of container for you that you cannot create on your own. You can create a beautiful container on your own, but not the exact same container that you can create with a man. And I love that you're having this conversation as a single mom, because it's not to denigrate single mothers or to say something's wrong with being a single mother, or you can't, or you shouldn't, or you should stay with any man you're with. It's like we've gotten to this point where we can't talk about anything great without it fearing it'll make someone else feel bad. It's like we're not trying to judge. We're talking about certain kinds of ideals, and also something that has been going on for all of history. Men and women have supported each other. Men and women have created beauty in each other's lives. And I think in some ways what's so tricky is some of these more traditional societies work because the roles are clear, right? We have roles are in dispute now, and it makes it very destabilizing if women are also the providers and men are also the providers, and we don't know which jobs we're supposed to do, and women are not happy because we don't want to do all the traditional jobs and all the modern jobs. Now we have to renegotiate, which is very challenging, to renegotiate everybody's expectations all the time. But that's required in a modern marriage. Whereas a traditional marriage, everybody comes in knowing what they have to serve and knowing what they can probably expect to receive, and you don't have to rehash that. It's just a matter of you fulfilling your responsibilities, which can be take the load off all that communication and emotional labor. Not to say I want to go back to that either, because I love the freedom that I get in a modern marriage, but it does require this level up of your understanding of emotions, of your, like, traditional women understood men because everybody understood men and women traditionally. Now we are having to dig up that knowledge and prove it through science so people don't get mad at you, and then say, actually, this will help you if you understand that we're different. And it's a travesty to me, honestly, that this is politically incorrect, because how can you live with this other person and have no idea what they are? How can you raise your sons? I mean, I have 2 sons, and I think that women having sons blasts our brains open, because we maybe had bad experiences with men and we have all these issues. But now that we see it from day one and we go, oh, this is not some toxic masculine conditioning, this is a boy. It's like, you know, we really have to face how different we are, and we love it because we love our boys, and we can't help but saying, isn't that sweet? And oh my God, isn't he like a boy? Like, sorry, right? And so anyways, it's something I'm afraid to talk about, frankly, because people can get such hate for it. But I also feel it's the second step in my method. You have to understand men. You cannot have a healthy relationship that is satisfying to you.
Well, on this podcast, you can talk about it without being scared about talking, because I'm in your boat. This is... I have not thought that this would be possible when I was young, when I actually got pregnant with my son. I thought, why? Like, as I said, I was a man hater. I didn't understand them. I didn't understand why this happened to me, right? And then I quickly understood. Like, by month 8 or 9, I started to understand that this is actually a gift. The greatest gift that I could get in this life is to find understanding of another human being that is so different from me. And this is like, I already understand myself. I know how I work. I know how I think, right? Or how women are. But what a great gift it is to actually experience how someone grows up to be a man. And I can be part of that. I can make a way for him to find his way, right? Not to dictate anything, right? But to make room, to make space, and to become a better person through that.
It's amazing, Bless.
I can talk for hours with you. This is one of my favorite topics, relationships. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, sharing your experience and your expertise. It was a blast, and I would love it to have you back on my show.
Yeah, I had so much fun too. I could talk about this stuff forever. I was every topic we got into, I was like, oh, we could go there or there or there, and like